Hello Year 10 and welcome to your Paper 1 Walking Talking Mark. Now, one of the things that we're going to be doing across the next few lessons is we're going to go through how you answer the questions on Paper 1. We're going to give you some strategies to help you revise Paper 1, but also give you the opportunities to actually have a go and try and write based on the way that we've told you to kind of answer the questions. Now, you must remember that for this question or for this paper, you get a source, as you can see here, and this is the extract from the Tenant of Wildfell Hall, and then you get your question papers. Now, for printing and kind of helping the environment purposes, we have not printed it as an exam, but you've got all the things that you genuinely need. Now, as you have noticed, I've already written some things down, and that's because I started recording and then the video stopped. So now, one of the things that we do recommend when it comes to this question, to this paper, is that you always start with question 5 first. Now, question 5, of course, is all the way at the end of the paper, but it's your 40 markers, is the creative writing story, and if you start your answers with that one first, what it does tend to mean is that you can write for 45 minutes and you keep your eye on the time, and then you can always go back at the end and proofread and notice maybe the things that you have written that maybe doesn't make sense or you want to improve. Then the order is kind of depending on how you want to do it. So you could do question 1, question 4. Definitely question 4 has to be one of the next ones. And then it's a toss-up between question 2 and question 3. Okay, and that again is all to do with the marks. So I started with question 5 because that's 40 marks, and then I started up with question 4 there because that's 20 marks. What does tend to happen sometimes is that pupils spend too much time on question 2, then on question 3, then they rush question 4, or they spend too much time on question 4, and they don't make it to question 5, which is a really, really important one to make it to. So that's just a bit of advice. If you want to write like tip here, so like for example, tip, like this might be an order that you want to follow. Now remember, it is your paper, it is your exam. You do not get marked on how you answer and the order that you answer things. You need to do what you feel is best for you during the exam. Now, before I even read the source, and this becomes really, really important, is I always read through all the questions and find the lines that I need. Now, you'll see that that is probably going to take me about 5 minutes. In the real exam, it will take you less than 5 minutes, and that's because I'm slowing down, giving you time to write things down, but actually it's a really good strategy and technique to have to read the paper and the questions as you before you start the exam or you read the source. So let's have a look at question 1 first. So we're going to look at the question. You can see already I've highlighted it, and then the video did not work. So it says here, read again paragraph 2 and 3 of the source from lines 11 to 23. So look at that. I've highlighted 11 to 23. And then what I do, I immediately go to the source and I find lines 11 to 23. Now, if you notice, they are kind of like an odd number. In the real exam, they do show you where those odd number lines are, so then you're not having to spend ages trying to count them. And what I tend to do is I tend to put a line like this, and I label that as, that's for question 1. So I have to read all of that for question 1. So let's carry on reading the questions. Then I've got question 2. So I'm going to put that here. So let's see what I have to do for question 2. It says this again. Look in detail at this extracts from lines 1 to 10. Now, I do also label it in the source, but remember, you don't have to because ultimately you have got it there. But I do think it's quite helpful to know, as I'm reading, what question is focusing on what. So I tend to do that. So lines 1 to 10, and then I label it question 2. Okay, so I've got question 1, and then question 2. So I'm starting to see what is being used for what in the paper. Okay, so I've done that. And then I really quickly read the question and highlight the key words in that question. So how does the writer use language to present Wildfell Hall? So first of all, this is a language question, and present Wildfell Hall. I kind of highlight that as well. And then I know that those are the things I need to look for. Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question, which is question 3. Now, for question 3, it says the following. You need to think about the whole of the source. Okay, so I just need to actually highlight, it's the whole of the source. I need to read the beginning all the way to the end. I'm not going to label that. How does the writer structure? I know that this question is always about structure. The extract reveals sense of curiosity and suspense. I'm going to highlight that because that seems to be the focus of the question. Okay, so I've done question 3, so I'm going to put that back there. And then I need to look at question 4. Now for question 4, again, I've got the main question. It says from line 24 to the end. So I go back to my source. So I've got my lines from line 24 to the end. Look, I've got 24 there. So I need this all the way to the end. Okay, so that's my question 4. Now by doing this, what I'm ensuring as well is that when I'm doing my question 4, that I don't think the source ends here, that I do turn around and find the rest of the stuff. Okay, so I've done my question 4, and then the last one that I have is my question 5. Now, as you can see, like you can do this without even reading the source. So it says, a website has asked for examples of creative writing for its new page. Write a description as suggested by this picture. So again, suggested by this picture. And then write a story where you meet a new person. Now, personally, I feel that I could start this straight away, and I usually would do paper 1, question 5 first, okay? Now, if you can see, that is taken now about, like, literally it was 2 minutes, so it's taken me 4 minutes to read through the paper, highlight the main things that I need to do, and now actually be ready to read the question, the source. So that's what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to read the source as just part of the paper. I would recommend that for paper 1, you do get to read the source, because then as you are answering, again later on, you'll be able to find the answers. You'll see that I'm not going to read massively fast. This is going to take me probably about 6 to maximum 7 minutes to read. Okay. Now I might highlight things that I think are important as I go along, but I'm not going to make a massive fuss of it because I want to get the feel of the source and the gist of what is happening. All right, so let's start reading. This extract is from The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte, published in 1848. The narrator arrives at the eerie and neglected Wildfell Hall. Now I'm actually going to highlight that because it means that I'm sure there was a question about Wildfell Hall, so it's eerie and neglected, observing minor repairs made from its new inhabitants. Also, there's new people living there, so that must be important. The narrator meets a child. Okay, so this is a source. Near the top of the hill, about 2 miles from Linden Car, stood Wildfell Hall, a superannuated Elizabethan mansion of dark grey stone, venerable and picturesque, yet cold and gloomy, a forgotten relic of a bygone era standing in silent defiance against time. Its thick stone window frames, lattice panes, and time-worn air holes added to its bleak appearance. Exposed on a lonely hilltop, it was shielded only by storm-blighted trees as grim as the hall itself, the twisted branches reaching out like skeleton fingers grasping at the sky. Behind lay desolate fields and heath. Before it, a neglected garden, once carefully shaped, but now overtaken by weeds, weather, and decay. Overgrown hedges, a broken statue of a swan, a distorted laurel figures gave it an eerie, almost ghostly presence. I had succeeded in killing a hawk and 2 crows when I came within sight of the mansion, and then I sauntered on to have a look at the old place and see what changes had been wrought in it by its new inhabitant. I paused beside the garden wall and looked and saw no change except in one wing where the broken windows and dilapidated roof had evidently been repaired, and where a thin wreath of smoke was curling up from a stack of chimneys. While I thus stood, leaning on my gun and looking up at the dark gables, sunk in an idle reverie, I heard a slight rustling and scrambling just within the garden. I glanced in the direction from where the sound proceeded. I beheld a tiny hand elevated above the wall. It clung to the topmost stone, and then another little hand was raised to take a firmer hold, and then appeared a small white forehead surmounted with wreaths of light brown hair, with a pair of deep blue eyes beneath, and the upper portion of a diminutive ivory nose. The eyes did not notice me, but sparkled with glee on beholding Sancho, my beautiful black and white setter. The little creature raised his face and called aloud the dog. The good-natured animal paused, looked up, and wagged his tail, but made no further advances. The child, a little boy apparently about 5 years old, scrambled up to the top of the wall and called again and again, but finding this of no avail, apparently made up his mind, like Mohammed, to go to the mountain, since the mountain would not come to him, and attempted to get over. A crabbed old cherry tree that grew hard by caught him by the frog in one of its crooked, scraggy arms that stretched over the wall. In attempting to disengage himself, his foot slipped, and down he tumbled, but not to the earth. The tree still kept him suspended. There was a silent struggle, and then a piercing shriek. But in an instant I had dropped my gun on the grass and caught the little fellow in my arms. I wiped his eyes with his frog, told him he was all right, and called Sancho to pacify him. He was just putting a little hand on the dog's neck and beginning to smile through his tears, when I heard behind me a click of the iron gate and a rustle of female garments, and lo, Mrs. Graham darted upon me, her neck uncovered, her black locks streaming in the wind. "Give me the child," she said in a voice scarce louder than a whisper, but with a tone of startling vehemence. And seizing the boy, she snatched him from me, as if some dire contamination were in my touch, and then stood with one hand firmly clasping his, the other on his shoulder, fixing upon me her large, luminous dark eyes, pale, breathless, quivering with agitation. Okay, so looking at that took me actually about 5 minutes to read the whole source. And if you notice, I wasn't rushing it. I was going actually at quite a nice pace, I think. The next thing that I might do actually is, I noticed that at the bottom of the source, there's a few words that I may not have understood. So the first one is that superannuated, meaning old and outdated. So I like to look at the word and I like to highlight it. So I find it there, it was right at the beginning, and I just make a quick note, it means old, outdated. So I just kind of get that ready for myself. Then there was another word, what's the other word? Venerable, oh that was right at the beginning as well, venerable. So it's describing the house, so what does venerable mean? Meaning respected due to age or character. Okay, so it means there's something kind of appealing about the house. So I'm going to put here, appealing, respected. Okay, so even though it's an old house that's a bit dilapidated, there's something grand and amazing about it. Now, the next bit is a setter. Now, that was towards the end. Oh, a setter. So that is a breed of dog. Okay, dog breed, sorry. Dog breed. So it's just a type of dog. So like a Shih Tzu or whatever, but it's not a Shih Tzu, it's a setter. And then I've got this word, I hate this word, I don't like the way that you pronounce this word, vehemence. So vehemence here meaning strong passion and intense feeling. Okay, so she seems a bit angry then. Passion. Okay, so I'm just writing the way that that person is being described. Now, if you notice, actually, that's taken about 15 minutes in total. I've read the paper, I've read the source, and it does say at the beginning of the paper that you should spend about 15 minutes reading through the paper and reading through the source. If I'm honest, in the exam, it will take you less time than that because you won't be talking in between. Okay, so the next video is going to be question 1 and question 2.